Hey, how you doing? I just want to preface this by saying that unlike my other videos, this video is going to be barely edited. I have bullet points of what I want to say, but other than that, it's mostly just going to be me going unscripted. Here are the timestamps for the video, by the way. It's probably going to be pretty choppy, but yeah, here's my review for Spider-Man No Way Home. This entire movie could be seen as nostalgia bait, and in a way it is, but while that may be true, I feel like this is one of the best ways to have done it. They were just casually throwing in cameos from Daredevil, the other Spider-Man, the villains. It really does feel like a love letter to everyone that watched the Spider-Man movies beforehand. I really loved Andrew Spider-Man the most in this movie. He was the depressed one, and he just needed a hug the most of the time, and I think him sharing conversations with Toby and Tom really was the highlight for the movie for me. Andrew just had so many of the best lines in the movie, and I felt like his character did get some sort of redemption. I mean, obviously he did by catching MJ at the end, but I feel like in terms of characterization and writing-wise, it was much more defined, whereas in his other two movies, it was kind of conflicting between does he want to help people or is he just there to make jokes. But here, it really shows like a different aspect of him making jokes. We hear the future of the two different Spider-Men from when we left them. Toby's was able to work it out with his MJ, and Andrew mentioned how he tried moving on from Gwen's death and eventually stopped pulling his punches. I mean, like, it's a quick line, but if you really think about it, that's some pretty dark stuff. Like, does he just brutally beat people almost to death nowadays? It has very dark implications, and I really like how they threw that in there. It adds another layer to the jokes that he throws around, and that shows that there is a jaded and dark side to him that's still present in him. And when they're first introduced, it still feels like a fever dream thinking about it. Andrew comes in such a glamorous way, looking down through a dark alleyway and then running at a slow pace and then gradually jumps through the portal. It felt so cinematic with such a beautiful suit that he had on. And then you had Toby over there who just casually walks through in his most mundane Peter Parker PS1 outfit. It literally is the Peter fit from PS1.
I'm already at full health.
In all honesty, I feel like it'd be really hard to not have something to enjoy in this movie. The theater sounded like a coliseum. Here's what some of my friends had to say. So what'd you think of the movie?
Oh my gosh, it was so good. I think it wrapped up like the Peter Parker saga really well. And it was like a Marvel movie, but it felt like not a Marvel movie in a good way.
Oh! I was screaming minus the S.
I thought it was cool, a little slow in the beginning, but all 2-hour movies are kind of, the world building or whatever.
10 out of 10.
It was amazing.
Hey, that was pretty good.
It was shocking.
It's the best Spider-Man movie ever.
It was amazing.
It was spectacular.
The three of them together makes me nuts.
Out of the 3 Tom Holland movies, I feel like this is the best of the 3. And that isn't to say that the other 2 are bad. Well, I really didn't like Far From Home. And I would mention why, but I actually don't remember the movie for some reason. I guess it's been a really long time. This one's just so much more memorable. I'm definitely going to go see it again with different people. But thematically, this movie does feel a lot different as well. Like, there are a lot of misfortunes that happen in Peter's life in this movie. Iron Man heavily was in the plot for the last 2 movies, and this one he's nowhere to be seen. Well, he's mentioned here and there, but really, it's definitely... Well, I wasn't going to say self-contained, but it does really feel like this story is heavily involved with Spider-Man himself, and it's not directly correlated with another superhero. I know Doctor Strange shows up, but definitely it felt like Spider-Man focused, and the villains were motivated by Spider-Man and not Tony Stark this time, and which I really liked. In this way, it kind of makes it feel less like a conclusive ending to Tom Holland's trilogy and more like the beginning of something new. The way the movie is shot as well definitely helps make this feel like it was filmed by someone else. I know John Watts made this movie as well, but he had the Raimi pan where the camera kind of moves in with the dolly but zooms out, and it creates this kind of spider-sensey effect, and I thought that bringing that back was definitely a good choice. It helped make the camera work feel much more dynamic, and I feel like it added a layer of intensity and urgency whenever Spider-Man was in trouble. That single hotel room where Peter just senses something is wrong had my heart beating fast the whole entire time. God, this movie's so good. I also love the blending of each Spider-Man's theme. They found this interesting way to blend in Tom Holland's theme, Tobey Maguire's theme, and Andrew Garfield's theme all together, whenever they were seamlessly transitioning between each Spider-Man in the final battle, and I thought that was really cool. They could have easily just plopped it in there without blending it in. It shows that they actually really did care about how each of these Spider-Men felt, and that's another thing. I like how their personalities were kept intact. I mean, as you can see, Andrew's Spider-Man is very much I feel like he is the funniest of the three, and you can definitely see that in the banter between the three of them. But again, like, that dynamic, I feel like, okay, I'm going all over the place again. Sorry. I think that having them be distinct in their own way was definitely a good thing, because it was definitely highlighted in this movie, and it played to their strengths and made it work. That's what made the dynamic work between the three Spider-Men. Even down to the sound effects. Whenever Tobey shot his web, it was the classic sound effect from the Raimi trilogy. And then when Andrew shot his web, it was the same sound effect that they used from his movies. I just love those little details. And this goes into the depth of the characters. They didn't expand too much on what already existed from the previous Spider-Man character traits. I think for the most part, they did have a little bit of a time skip from when we last saw them, and it just feels like a natural progression of what they would feel like in today's world from what we've seen last. But I did find it funny though that, and granted there isn't that much screen time to go around, so that's probably why this happened, that Peter's sidekicks, besides Zendaya and Ned, everyone else just gets kicked to the curb. Like, Flash Thompson has 30 seconds of screen time, Betty Brant has one line, literally, and, I mean, upon reflection, right, in the past two movies, we know nothing about them, and I don't know if the creative team that was writing this movie wanted to explore them more than just their names, but I'm totally okay with them being kicked to the curb, and no disrespect to the actors, it's just that, I mean, their characterizations were pretty bad. Like, they felt like cartoon characters, and hey, at least we got screen time for the other people. But bro, when Electro came back, oh my gosh, I had no idea how they were gonna reintroduce him into the movie. He was probably the weirdest addition to this movie, especially given with the reception of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. But oh my gosh, when he spawned in, the dubstep was back, baby! I like how it only happened for that one moment when he was just spawning in, and then it never came back. Another thing I found really funny, the way they were zooming in on Tom's face when Andrew and Tobey brought up Uncle Ben, it looked like he was going to say something about his Uncle Ben. But then they just kept zooming in, and he could tell that he was all like, who? I honestly don't care anymore that they don't acknowledge him in these movies. They've made it clear that that's what they want with Tom's movies. It's just pretty funny. Oh yeah, and Avi Arad had a whole black screen of text thanking him for assembling everything in the credits. I wonder who wrote that. Oh right, yeah, one of the characters that was kind of a side character in Tom's other movies that kind of didn't have that much dimensions to them was Aunt May. She was definitely used as the butt of the joke most of the time in the last two movies, but here she definitely played like a key role, and I actually really loved what they did with her character in this movie. They really dialed it in on how much of a bad guardian she was for being actively supporting of her high school surrogate son, putting himself in danger all the time. And she never really gave reason as to why she was very supportive of it. She was very deflective, saying that it was the right thing to do, but never fully engaged in the conversation as to why she's willing to let basically her son, put his life on the line for others. And yeah, it is the right thing to do as a hero, but then again, that is your son. You raised him. That's your baby. And I guess in this situation, right, it makes sense in the context of who she is as a person, because her not talking about it out loud, or basically dodging the question entirely and not reasoning it out, adds another dimension to this version of Aunt May. Her death scene was basically another Uncle Ben moment, and I think it was done really well. The way they were setting up everything, though, I thought she was going to get impaled into the wall or something. You know how Norman got impaled into the wall in Spider-Man 1? But then she got up, and I was like, there's no way you were just scratched from that. And then she goes back down, and then like, ah, yeah, there you go. Which, can I say, Willem Dafoe and Alfred Molina were popping off. Those two still got it. The fight scene between Spider-Man and Octopus on the highway was definitely one of the highlights, but I think my favorite one was Spider-Man versus the Goblin in the apartment scene. Holy crap, dude, like, I love the intensity in that. Norman was really terrifying, especially after each punch, he was just smiling, and then he like power bombs him through 3 floors. I think this is the most creative I've seen Jon Watts be with Spider-Man. I mean, up until now, I don't think there was any fight scenes that I could pinpoint to for Tom Holland that I really liked. That was in one of his solo movies. The fight scenes that I really liked of Spider-Man, of this one at least, was the ones from the Avengers movies. But I feel like this one is definitely going to be in the history books. The final beatdown of Goblin felt kind of weird. Like, it felt intense, definitely, but I think they relied a lot on fast cuts, and this might have been because Willem Dafoe was adamant of being there himself for doing the action scenes, and maybe he just couldn't keep up. I don't know what the reason was, but there was definitely a lot of fast cuts during that last fight scene. You could still feel the rage and intensity of Holland's Peter lashing out on Green Goblin, but I feel like the fast cuts were conflicting with the tone of that they were trying to go for. And also, when Peter was going in on him, each punch felt passionate, but then they zoom in on Goblin's face after all that and there's no blood. Apparently he's all fine, I guess?
I'm something of a scientist myself.
There's also two other things I wanted to mention real quick. The CGI was definitely top-notch. I mean, it is noticeable at times, especially in the third act when the three Spider-Men are doing their things and then everything was happening all at once. But for the most part, the computer graphics were amazing, especially the de-aging they used for Willem Dafoe and Alfred Molina. You could watch this after Spider-Man 1 and 2 and just say, wow, they have not aged a day. But, and this isn't really a negative, it's just something I thought I'd point out, is I don't know, I'll probably look it up later, but I don't know if they actually did get Thomas Hayden Church and Rhys Ifan as the Sandman and the Lizard again, because, I mean, the Sandman's voice, right? It sounded like Thomas Hayden Church, but I don't know if they actually physically got him to be in the movie because when they cured him, or quote-unquote cured him, right, it looked like that was stock footage from Spider-Man 3. Like, I could have sworn that clip they used of him coming back into human form after being fully developed as a sand person, that looked like when he was turning into mud or something from Spider-Man 3. And then when they cured the Lizard and he turned back to Rhys Ifan, it looked like that was the ending scene of Spider-Man, or The Amazing Spider-Man, when he was cured as well. But I don't know. It's just something I thought I'd point out. The few gripes I have with this movie, those aren't really huge. They don't really ruin the experience, but one of them was Sandman's heel turn. Like, it made sense in the beginning, right? At the end of Spider-Man 3, he made amends with Peter. So that's why he was supportive in the beginning of this movie. They forgave each other. Then he saw Electro get vaporized. At least in his eyes, it looked like he got vaporized by Spider-Man. So then he switched sides, which also makes sense. Then he said he'd help the villains get cured if it helped him get home, which continually makes sense as well because he has a daughter to get back to, according to Spider-Man 3. And yes, that's his primary motivation. It's still the same motivation from when we last saw him. And then at the end, he said he didn't care if he went home. Like, oh, but don't you have a daughter? Like, isn't she dying? I don't know if they thought that one through. And Electro's voice. You see, in Amazing Spider-Man 2, Electro had this kind of low, whispery voice when he turned into pure electricity. In the beginning of The Amazing Spider-Man 2, he had a completely different talking voice, which was great because I thought that offered a clear distinction as to how he was different personality-wise between the transformations. But in this movie, he has that low voice in human form as well, and I don't know, it seemed kind of weird, I'm not gonna lie. It works as him as Electro, that whispery, low tone of voice. Like, when he's covered in electricity, it sounds really menacing and intense. But when it's just Jamie Foxx and he's using that voice, and I don't know, it's kind of weird. But all in all, I'm curious to see what happens next now that no one knows who Peter is. So much suffering happened in this movie, and I loved it. Is that bad to say? Yeah, it probably is. Tom Holland really gets to show his range as an actor in this movie. So those are my thoughts on No Way Home. I'd end the video here, but it's been like 2.5 years since I've been gone, and there were some movies and shows I really wanted to briefly talk about. So here they are. Far From Home was alright. I remember really not liking it when it first came out, but to be honest, I don't really remember much. And that's not a negative thing. I think, honestly, I was just losing so much interest in watching those types of movies that I just needed a break. Again, I'll get into that later. But I think for the most part, the cast was pretty solid. I liked the chemistry between Zendaya and Tom Holland. The suit looks amazing, by the way. The only iffy thing that I was on was the white symbol on his back. I mean, it's aesthetic for that costume and what they were going for, but I really did like the classic Spider-Man look from the Homecoming suit. But that was just my personal preference. For what they were going for, it worked pretty well. I honestly understand why this movie gets so much hate. I mean, it is what it is. The theater that I was in, everyone was just laughing. I couldn't even hear what the actors were saying. But I feel like I have a soft spot for the X-Men movies, and because of that, I do appreciate this movie in some sort of way. And that's not to say that the movie's good. I mean, Quicksilver was in it. Well, for like 2 seconds. But yeah, I feel like I'm one of the few people that kind of does like it in a way. Again, not because it's good, but just because I have a soft spot for the X-Men movies. I forgot I watched this movie. Yeah, so this one I also forgot a lot of things about, but I feel like it's different from Far From Home. I think I forgot a lot of things about Far From Home because it was longer. It was a longer time frame from when I watched that movie. Black Widow was just a few months ago, actually. That's weird. But yeah, I don't think I'm gonna watch it again. Scarlett Johansson was good. The actors did their parts. It's just yeah, I feel like everything's already been said about this movie. It came out pretty late. I don't think I cared that much by the time it came out, but I just watched it anyways because I thought maybe it might lead into something into the future movies. I don't know. By the time Shang-Chi came out, I was kind of already just not looking forward to any of the MCU movies. I think for the most part, I wasn't really familiar with Shang-Chi at all. The trailers weren't really doing it for me. I wasn't really excited from any of the trailers. But then I started hearing reviews that it was really good, and it was also this time where I was getting really busy with schoolwork, and it's come to my attention about like how time sensitive these movies are. Like, if you're really on a time crunch, which I really was at the time, I didn't want to like sit through a movie that was getting bad reviews and, you know, essentially just waste my time because I'm not going to enjoy the movie anyways. And I know people like to say, oh, just watch the movie and like think about it for yourself, but honestly, that's what reviews are for. They're here to let you know, like, if you're going to waste your time or if you're going to enjoy it, you know, money well spent. And for me, I'm so glad I actually watched this because of those reviews, because wow, the action scenes were phenomenal. Simu Liu, dude, you actually got me and my brother watching Kim's Convenience because of that. We really loved you in that movie. I think the fight scenes were on par, or I'd say it's even better than Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier had that one knife fight scene that I really liked, but for the most part, Shang-Chi had so many good set pieces. It's hard to pick which was my favorite. Ooh, this one. So yeah, I wasn't really a big fan of the first Venom movie, but knowing what that was, and then I saw the second or first trailer, whatever it was like one of the first 2 trailers for Venom 2, and yeah, they basically let the audience know that they knew what they were going in with, and that they were just gonna embrace all the silliness that came with the first movie, and yeah, so I watched Venom 2 and going in with that mindset, it was just a whole lot of fun, honestly. Like, it's really hard to like not enjoy this movie in its own sort of way. I mean, like, yeah, it fails in many aspects as a movie, but I mean, honestly, who cares? Like, it was a fun time. I watched it with my family. It was a really good fun time. But Woody Harrelson, bro, I have no idea what they're doing with your head, because, like, I mean, the first movie, that was a yikes. And the second movie, dude, I don't even know. That looks... I didn't even watch this movie. That soundtrack you heard earlier, that's not even from this movie. That's from Lull in the Sea. Go watch it, by the way.
I'm in.
Eternals is on here because it's an MCU movie, and I guess it's expected of me to have watched it, but I didn't watch it. This was one of those movies where I was under a time crunch. Like, I had 2 midterms. One I was really unprepared for, and this one came out like the weekend before, or like around that time. And I had a choice between either this movie or My Hero World's Mission, which I chose My Hero 3, by the way, over this. Oh, which matter of fact, My Hero World's Mission is a pretty solid movie. It's one of those few anime movies I got to experience in the movie theaters, and I really loved the experience. I wouldn't say it's as good as the other 2 My Hero movies. I watched Heroes Rising and 2 Heroes as well. I think Heroes Rising still comes out on top when comparing the 3 for me, but I think it is a pretty solid movie still. In its own right, I think it was really well made. The final action scene was just drop-dead gorgeous, and I'm really looking forward to what they do with Season 6. Alright, we're not done yet. We still got the MCU shows. I actually watched the show out of order. I remember when the news dropped that a certain someone came. I mean, you already know it's Quicksilver. He was showing up in the show, and this channel is just like yeah, he's here a lot. I remember I just jumped into the show on that episode he debuted. I think it was the very end of episode 4 or 5. I don't remember the exact number, but I remember I started from there, and then I watched the Halloween episode where he was completely in the episode. Because I know he was introduced at the end of one of the episodes, and then the following episode, he played a big part, and that was a whole lot of fun. Honestly, I really liked that, believing that he could possibly return as Quicksilver. But then they revealed everything, and I was like, yeah, I knew it was too good to be true. It's not that I'm mad or anything. It's just that, man, what did Marvel have to gain from doing that, bro? But then as the whole show came out, I started rewatching it in order, and yeah, I think it's a really solid show. I think Falcon and the Winter Soldier was a really good way of changing things up, especially with the way the Disney Plus shows started. They started with WandaVision, which was very magical and out there, whereas Falcon and the Winter Soldier was very down to earth, and it was a very more confined story, honestly, and yeah, I really don't have much to say about this show. It was alright. Loki was a very different show. I think it was very ambitious compared to the other ones, because I think they were trying to introduce like a new major villain, and the whole idea of variance and time travel, I think, was very interesting. I mean, we've seen it before in the MCU, but Loki did it in an entirely different way. I think if I had to say it right now, this is probably my favorite Disney Plus show from the MCU. I've only watched one episode of Hawkeye, but it seems pretty good so far. But enough about that. We should probably talk about the elephant in the room. Right, so where do I start? To be honest, when I left, I was in a really bad position, like mentally. I don't think that I was in a good position to keep making videos around that time when I left. I think even before then, around, I want to say the last few videos starting from early 2019, those last 6 months of making videos really dialed it in on how much I was just getting sick of that routine of making the same, or not making the same stuff. It's just that covering the same topics, and just me editing that every other week, because I ran on a schedule. I never outright said it, but I always wanted to release videos on a bi-weekly basis, because I mean, even by YouTube standards, that was sort of infrequent. It is consistent in that there was a routine, but it was never like daily uploads or anything. But for me, even bi-weekly uploads every other week, that one was so much for me. And I don't know if I'd ever do that again. Jeez, I'm going all over the place, I'm sorry, but basically where I've been is just trying to focus on being there for my loved ones and making time for myself, honestly, and making sure that I was healthy, not just mentally, but physically as well. And doing that, for me at least, I just couldn't juggle going to school, managing that kind of life, as well as the YouTube thing. And as much as I appreciate YouTube happening and everything that came with it, I think it is time to sort of move on. And that's not to say that I'm going to delete this channel or that I'm going to completely never upload again, because never say never, right? I might run into another movie that I really like and that I really want to talk about. I mean, there's that anime that I mentioned that I really want to talk about. It's just that, I don't know, I don't want my winter break to be dedicated to doing this again. It's probably going to be a long time before you guys see an upload from me again. But I never got to say goodbye, at least for that 2-year span, 3-year span that I've been gone. And I felt kind of guilty about it. And yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for everything and actually watching my videos. And it's surreal because like we've never seen each other, but I really am appreciative of you guys watching my stuff. And thank you, honestly. Just thank you so much. I feel like I'm in a much better place in saying goodbye now, and I could say that's why I waited so long in doing so, but honestly, I just was focused on so many other things, and YouTube was the last thing on my mind. Focusing on mental health was a really struggling thing for me. It took a lot of time, and I think for the most part, it's something I'm still working on, right? It's not that I'm in a perfect position now, but I am in a better place to say everything that I'm saying right now, and thanking you guys for everything, and honestly saying goodbye in a healthier state of mind. And I know having that support system is kind of a no-brainer of how important it is, but for the duration that I was doing YouTube for, it didn't really hit me of how exactly significant it was in my life, and me not taking care of it really took a toll on me, and I think having that time off was really beneficial in my end, and I think it's just something I really needed. But yeah, as of right now, goodbye.